Today we're going to talk about how to have a healthy business. If you have a business, you just started one, or you've had one for a while, or maybe you're interested in starting a business, this is the video for you. Today we have our friends over at Pacific Pyramid Bank that are going to be helping us cover this topic, answer a lot of questions, and go over in detail how you can have a healthy business. If you're watching this video, please be sure to subscribe, share, comment any questions that you have in this video and this workshop that we're going to be doing for you in the comment section below. My name is Josh, Program Director here at Avance Latino. Excited to bring you this workshop here today.
Welcome, everybody. We're here for a discussion on planning for a healthy business, how to finance, how to launch, and how to organize your business. My name is Gene Arnaud. I'm with Pacific Premier Bank. I'm a first VP in the commercial banking division. I have a degree in finance. I also have a professional designation in alternative investments. I've been in the banking business for 30 plus years. I co-founded and started a bank, done billions of dollars in financing. 4 banks, been through about 4 recessions already, and this might be the beginning of the 5th. But anyway, welcome. I'll try to be as comprehensive as I can. If you don't mind, try to write down your questions during the presentation. I'd like to be able to address them towards the end. We'll have a Q&A session. And if there's something urgent, then obviously, you can interact. But for the most part, we're going to try to do the Q&A towards the end of the presentation, and I will try to keep it as brief as I can and cover all our subjects. So one of the things that I remember for a long, long time, and I've actually seen it come to fruition, is failing to plan is much like planning to fail. And so I think it's a very important process. If you look at it, most people, the most successful people are typically very disciplined and very organized. So the planning part is an important part of the launch, because it's going to basically give you an idea of what your strengths are, what your weaknesses are, and what areas you need to focus on. Without it, it's like trying to do something in the dark. You're just not sure what you're going to do and how you're going to do it. So the most successful people, whether it be in entertainment or sports or whatever, technology, have one thing in common. A, they're pursuing their passion, and B, they're trusting their talent. So if you could just keep that concept in mind for yourselves, right? Pursue your passion, trust your talent. What does that mean? Well, you know what? When I was in high school, I loved playing basketball. I played basketball the first year, and then over the summer came back, and a lot of people got really, really tall. And after I realized that, wow, I said, this is probably not for me. But that's just making an assessment of what fits. Okay, that's just an example, right? Some of us, want to be football players, basketball players, or whatever it might be, and maybe we just weren't cut out for that. So what does that mean? It just means it has to be realistic and attainable. It doesn't mean that you stop your dream, but whatever you do, you want to gauge it. You want to make sure that your goals and your plans are attainable and they're reachable. Okay. So today what we're going to do is we're going to focus primarily on the different stages and some of the concepts that are relevant to those stages. 4-step process, basically, as it's listed here. Okay. The back of the napkin plan is a very typical conversation where people get their initial ideas, right? Sometimes these thoughts just come to you, and you have to be able to write them down while they're fresh in your mind. For example, sometimes when you're dreaming, you're thinking about things, and you wake up and you can still remember what you dreamed about. If it's relevant to your business or your mission or whatever that might be, write it down so you don't forget. Okay, and that's kind of goes hand in hand with the back of the napkin. Okay. Once you have a plan, then you got to go basically to how am I going to do this? Okay. What do I need? I'm going to need certain resources, certain equipment, certain tools, whatever that is. It's part of what they call the assessment process. Okay. And that's kind of covered in step number 2, right? If you have access to bankers and so forth like that, people that have experience in this space, talk to them, ask them, hey, what do you think? What do you want to see in the business plan? What do you guys look for when you're evaluating credit? How do you like to see it presented? Step 3, how I would like to manage my business, because money is typically like fuel is to an automobile. It's not going to go down the road without it. And so you got to plan for it. Okay. How am I going to, unless you're, independently wealthy and you inherit a lot of money, you don't have to worry about it. Doesn't matter. Down the road, sooner or later, you're going to need to use leverage, because that's going to enhance your profitability and your returns. Okay. Step number 4, what is an action plan? How will I manage the business, and how will I keep it healthy? How will I react to the changing dynamics in the market? A real life comparison right now is prime rate. The prime rate's gone up 150 basis points within the last 6 months. That's unheard of. We've never seen that before. Okay. So what does that mean? So let's just say somebody was borrowing at, 4%. Now they have to borrow at 6%. That's a 200 basis points increase. Okay. So far, we're at 150 basis points, but we're getting close to that 200 basis point increase and so forth. So the cost of money, what you'll hear referred to as debt service, is very, very important. You want to keep it down as much as you can, what you can control, which is going to be your credit. Okay. If you keep your credit scores high, your cost of money is going to be lower. Okay. Some of the things that's in your control. What's out of your control is going to be things like what's happening right now. The prime rate's going up, inflation's kind of going up through the roof and so forth like that. You really can't do anything about that. That you need to understand these concepts because they're very important to your business. That's why you see people like over the last few years, they've been refinancing their businesses, trying to get long-term fixed rates that are low so that they can secure their cost of capital. And everybody does this. General Motors does this, Ford, all the biggest corporations in the world have to deal with the same concept. All right. So again, we're going to go a little bit back to Sophia. This is an example for your business, right? What are you thinking about doing? How are you going to do it, right? Back of the napkin, doing an assessment, putting the plan together, and then an action plan, okay? Everything you do pretty much has to have a combination of your goals or where you want to go, your strategies, or how you're going to get there, okay? And within the strategies, you have to adjust, okay? What worked this year or the first 6 months of the year might not work next year. So you have to have that concept in your mind all the time, but you have to be flexible, okay? And then for some of your investors, they're going to want to know, Mr. Smith, what's your goal for the first year? What's your goal for the second year? In other words, they're going to look at maybe a 5-year plan, and they're going to want to see that you've kind of thought that through. This is what I think is going to happen the first year. After that, if it's scalable, which means can I grow it? How am I going to expand it? How am I going to handle more employees? How are the employees are going to manage? What type of employees? That all comes into the picture. Okay. Again, I'm not going to spend a whole lot of time here. I do a lot of stuff, in notepads. Real quickly, I'll just go ahead and put concepts together and circle them like a little planets. And that way I can go back and say, okay, so I've got this and this, but I don't have that. These are things that are very important. Just take a real quick look at this, okay? What are my equipment needs? Where am I at with my credit scores? Am I going to do a website? Is somebody else going to do a website? Who's my competition? That's very important. Who else is doing what I'm doing? And what are they charging for? Because you got to build your pricing model, okay? Let's go real quick. What benefits or monetary, non-monetary do I want to get from my business? In other words, what do you want to make from it? What are your goals? What do you need? You have overhead, you have bills, you have a family, you got bills to pay. How much do I need? Okay. How big of a business do I need to have in order to do what I want to do? Okay. What kind of business opportunity in relationship to what the competition is really important. If you jump into a space where there's a lot of people already doing it, it's kind of hard to separate yourself from the competition. Maybe you can, but you have to keep that in mind. You have to be able to answer that question. Why me over so-and-so? Okay. The assets, equipment, employment resources, all that stuff is going to come into picture, right? So do I need a facility? How much is it going to cost for that facility? I'll probably have to rent it for how long? How many people do I need? All these things need to be built into the plan. You can put it into a spreadsheet on Excel, okay? Here's a good example, which is something that we can focus on for now. So Sophia estimates the startup cost for her 6 months, $18,250 for space, equipment, and supplies. Skill development, $1,100. Boom, $21,000 is what she's determined it's going to take to get her business off the ground. That's a huge accomplishment. Once you know what you need, then you can figure out how you're going to get it. And this presentation today is really about the whole picture. How do I determine what do I need, and then how do I figure out how I'm going to get it? That's a healthy business. Okay. All right. In this model here, Sophia's got a $21,000 startup cost. Okay. And Sophia's investment, she's able to put up $7,000 of her money, whether it came from her pocket directly or if it's something that came from friends and family. So what does that mean? Well, now she knows what her loan amount is, how much she has to finance, how much money she has to go out and acquire. In this case here, it's $14,000. Right. And one rule of thumb is that you typically don't want to finance more than 200% of the money you're putting in. So in this case, it worked out. She needs $21,000. She's putting in $7,000. She needs $14,000. Okay, that's a realistic number to come up with. Okay. The other thing, when you're raising money, depending on who is it that you're going to get money from, if it's family, friends, or maybe it's a mentor. And what do I mean by that? If sometimes some of you have mentor relationships, those are, think of them as like board members, okay? A board member typically not only can help with financing your business, like in the case of my bank, but they can bring expertise and market knowledge and clients sometimes to the table as well. So think about some of your investors as board members. Can they not only bring money, but can they bring some expertise? Can they bring some advice? Can they help open some doors for me in terms of clients? That's what we did when we opened up the bank. A lot of our board members were wealthy individuals with a lot of experience. They also had a lot of friends and businesses and client relationships where they actually were able to feed us. And so we were able to use those introductions to gain clients. Okay. So, all right. Some of the other things, again, are kind of self-explanatory. Locating equipment and supplies, pros and cons of buying things in bulk. What are fair wages that I'm going to pay for employees? What should I be paying myself? There's going to be cases a lot of times where you want to go ahead and leverage something that's already available. What do I mean by that? These are third-party services that you pay for as you need them. So if you don't need it, you don't have to keep paying for it. That's very, very frugal and smart to do at the beginning, because a lot of times you don't want to hire a full-time web guy when after you get the web done, you just need somebody to maintain it, right? There are services out there that'll build out a web for it. There's third-party services out there that could do some of the roles of your employees without you having additional employees in that fixed overhead, okay? So wherever possible, try to leverage that. Try to leverage these third-party services, because there's things that can be done for your business that you won't have to be paying for every week. It won't be overhead, okay? All right, ready to go to the next step. Here we go. So Sophia and her family worked hard to raise her credit score. I'm not going to tell you guys how to raise your credit score, because I'm assuming you probably already know that, but keep this in mind. Your debt ratio is one of the key things, okay? So if you've got a bunch of credit cards and a bunch of transactional finance arrangements where you're having to pay for and so forth like that, that's going to reduce your capacity to borrow, okay? So keep that in mind, because what are the finance people looking for? Their main concern is your ability to repay the debt. And that comes from two main things. One is your character. What have you done in the past? You have good credit score? Have you paid all your bills and so forth like that? You don't have any bankruptcies and blah, 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 defaults. And two is just your ability. So, for example, if a person's got, let's say in round figures, $5,000 a month coming in on his income, and with his rent and car and credit cards and, all the food, just the cost to live, he's spending $4,000 a month. He basically doesn't have any real padding. If something goes bad, a car breaks down or whatever, or he loses employment for a few months, he doesn't really have the resources to sustain that overhead, okay? So keep that in mind. Don't try to over leverage yourself. I've seen it over the years. I've seen some big successful businesses that sometimes get overly aggressive and they start spending money on different things that they don't really absolutely need. And then when we run into a situation like we're starting right now, it could end up being a severe recession. There's no padding. There's no padding, okay? So always keep that in mind. There's a reason why you want to maintain a certain amount of leverage, okay? And liquidity. Liquidity is cash on hand. Liquidity is availability to it, not just always cash on hand. It could be stocks. Anything that you can liquidate is what the word liquidity comes from, okay? So you can sell relatively quickly. So if you've got stock in a private company that's not traded on the New York Stock Exchange or the NASDAQ, the banks don't consider that liquidity, okay? Cash, stocks, those are typically considered gold, precious metals and things like that. These are things you can kind of exchange and so forth like that relatively quickly. You always want to have that padding, right? Because unexpected things happen in business, right? Sometimes maybe your clients aren't paying right on time. Maybe it's taking you longer to collect, okay? Maybe something happened and there's a supply chain issue and you're not able to get some of the things that you normally get for a certain price. Now you got to pay more. A good example of that is what's going on right now in the construction trades. Most construction businesses right now have been having a hard time getting a hold of certain products, appliances and things like that. And the cost has gone up. So what they put down in their plan and what they forecasted originally, even with a 15% contingency, is blown over that contingency. All right. So again, keep that in mind. Okay. One thing that's important here when Sophia did her plan is that she did check with her family and friends. And it goes back to my comments earlier about consider investors that have that capacity to maybe be like a board member. Somebody that's been in business before, somebody that has a track record in that, somebody that you respect and would be willing to give you good advice and so forth. You know people like that. You really do. Think about that though. It's the easiest ones to get money from typically is a good friend or a family member, and that's what you want to do. But also always keep in mind kind of like the strategic value of an investor. If there's somebody there that's done this before or something similar, they're going to be able to help you. They're going to be able to give you some thoughts and some suggestions and things like that. So they're not just providing money, okay? They're providing intellectual capital. And that's an important thing that you want to have. You want to have intellectual capital because for the most part, I'm assuming in the business you're in, that's what you're bringing to the table right now. You have what they call sweat equity. What's sweat equity? What I've learned and gained from doing it, from being boots on the ground. I've learned this particular trade from the School of Hard Knocks, okay? And while we're speaking about that, in initial stages, you're going to be considered a startup, okay? Startups are the highest risk companies to A, provide investment for, and B, provide loan for, okay? So you want to try to mitigate and reduce the risk as much as you can. How could you do that? Well, you have to answer the question is that, well, I've been in this industry for X amount of years. I'm quite familiar on the nuances of the trade craft, blah, 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 blah. Here's my track record. This is what I've done before, blah, 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 blah. Now, with each statement that I made, the level of risk is diminishing, being reduced. And so that's really an important concept that you have to keep in mind. Okay, you need to be able to demonstrate people that this is what I've done before, this is how I've done it. And what they're looking for is experience in the trade, a proven track record, a commitment to what you're doing, and a well thought out plan that covers this, describes it. Okay, because you're describing it to people for the most part that they don't know the new ins and outs of your business. They know some general concepts and so forth like that, but they're not going to have your trade craft, okay? They're not going to be the experts in whatever field it is. And especially if you're coming up with some new concept, that's even trickier, okay? But the other thing that a proven track record does when you're describing that to your investors and your bankers is to give them a level of comfort that, this isn't your first rodeo. You've been in this trade. You've done this. You've adjusted and so forth. You've got experience with some of the difficulties and the challenges that an operator is going to have. Okay. Again, probably went into it a little bit ahead of time, so I'm trying to keep this as fast as I can. But so here are the categories. You have the angel investors, bootstrapping yourself, crowdsourcing is a new source where you basically put something on the web. You got your families and firms. You have businesses and investors that will look at your startup as an incubator, how to get it off the ground, okay? There's state, local economic programs. Again, these are resources. There's peer-to-peer. That's a little bit harder to do. There's small business loans, and then there's venture capital. Venture capital are difficult to get because these guys typically want to deal with people that have already done this before. Startups, as long as it's in a trade, in an area of expertise that that person has a lot of, they won't even consider it, okay? And typically, the venture capital folks are going to be your most expensive people. They're going to take a piece of the business. They're going to want warrants and so forth like that. In the high-tech space, it's very common to get venture capital because it's very intangible what they're selling. So they do this all the time. But for bread and butter businesses and stuff like that, venture capital is difficult. Okay. What does it mean to be strategic? Well, I think it's kind of self-prophesizing, right? You're planning for the future. You're planning for success. You're planning for change. You want to minimize your risk, and you want to have an action plan. That's being strategic, okay? It's like the military does everything based on a strategic basis. And then they have contingencies. Okay. If this happens, we're going to do that. If that happens, we're going to do this. So you want to have it thought out. Okay. You want to plan for the future. What you can at least see most of the time, if you're lucky, you can see 6 months out, if that. So it's hard to predict 5 years out, isn't it? Right. That's all you can do. You can't project 10 years out and so forth like that. You can project what you think is going to happen in the next year, maybe in a year after that, to the first couple of years. So if you put a plan together, you want to have phases, I would suggest just limit the time. Okay, it's very difficult to project 5 years out. Now, having said that, on a typical operating business, you can do it. But we're not talking about an operating business. In some cases, maybe some of you have the business, it's up and running, and you're looking at expanding it. It's much easier for you to project what you think it's going to do 2, 3, 4, 5 years from down the road from now than it is for you to project that with something new because, for the most part, you're not sure where you're going to be, where your annual sales is going to be, what your gross income is going to be in 6 months. So when you plan for it, try to be very realistic that the dollar amounts and the goals are attainable. Because the last thing you want to do is be over optimistic and then not hit any of your goals. When we opened our bank, the bank that I was involved with as a co-founder, we had to be realistic about what we produced each quarter. And luckily we were able to hit those numbers, but it wasn't easy. Yeah. So you definitely want to make it so it's obtainable, because people that invest with you, they're going to want to know. They're going to ask you, hey, how's things going? And another thing I didn't really talk too much about is that how do you report your success? And that's how you're going to control and monitor the finance for your business. Okay. So there's a lot of different components that you have. And in the beginning, you're the janitor and you're the CEO. So you're probably going to do a lot of this stuff yourself. But accounting is a very key function in what you do. You really need to understand, what's it cost me to run the business? What am I paying for? What was my budget? Am I sticking to budget? Am I under budget? Are we over budget? These are things that are going to give you course corrections. It's like having a ship and being out in the ocean and there's no wind. So you're not going as fast as you thought you were. It's going to take you longer to get there. What can you do to adjust? Okay. In business, it's the same thing. You don't know what storms you're going to run into, what the weather's going to be like. What's the business climate going to be like? What's the consumer appetite for what you're doing? How am I going to sell this? How do I get customers? How much is it going to cost me to get customers? What kind of customers do I want? What's my ideal customer? You want to be able to answer these questions, okay? Because there's sometimes you're going to run into people that there's not the best fit, and you spend way too much time trying to accommodate your business model for them when you're much better off with a different type of customer. So try to remember that. Try to remember, what are my best? What's the profile of the best customer I can get, and what could I offer them? Okay. All right. So SMART goals. Again, in your workbook, just take a look at these categories. Right. Having SMART goals. What are the tasks? What is a measurement of success? Is it measurable? Is it attainable? How do I measure success? Okay. What are my timelines? Am I on time? Am I on a timeline schedule, or am I way off the timeline? Okay. Sometimes you might be off, but you can adjust. So always remember that. And then look at certain things where you can, like there's resources out there. Thank God we have a web. A lot of the stuff that we can get sample business plans. We can look at business plans that have already been done and get some thoughts from it and so forth. You can research a lot of things, what's typical. All right, I'm trying to wrap this up here. Let's talk a little bit about the plan in terms of what are some key components to it, right? What do I need? How am I going to get it? What's it going to cost? And how long is it going to take to meet my goals? Okay. Why do I say that? Is because a lot of times whoever lends you money or invests money, they're going to want to know, when do you think they're going to pay it back? And that's a real important component of the finance plan, right? The SBA and whatever lender we work with is going to wonder when they're going to get paid back. What is the term of the loan? How long is that loan? How long do I have to pay back? How am I going to pay back? Okay. All right. So again, you're going to refine your plan in terms of adaptability, right? It's not engraved in concrete. What types of changes do I need to make? How am I going to write the business plan? When am I going to write the business plan? That's really kind of up to you. And that's why I mentioned at the very start of this, take bite-sized pieces of the business plan. Because if you think about everything I just talked about, it gets a little bit overwhelming. If you can just focus on the beginning phase of it, if you can just focus on one leg of the 4 steps, that's how you build it, okay? And then you can incorporate that into your plan, right? And more importantly, what I mentioned earlier, if you have resources out there, they can not only provide money, maybe they might not provide money, but they can provide advice, input, suggestions, maybe customers, okay? Think of those people as well. Again, some of them won't be investing, but that's okay, because what they might be able to do is help you with some intellectual capital. We want to go into the Q&A at this particular time, and hopefully I was able to give you some ammunition, some guidance, a bit of a track record. Your next step here in having a healthy business is probably the most important, because it's going to put your hopes and your dreams into paper and into action. So it's well worth the investment of time, resource, and planning. It's all about planning, okay? Work the plan and stick to the plan, adjust when you need to, and then if need be, revise the plan. Okay. Any questions?
I have a couple of questions that I would like to ask you, if that's okay.
Sure, absolutely.
So the first question at the beginning, you mentioned a business plan, and I was wondering what's a good alternative since, a typical business plan can be overwhelming for a lot of small business owners, especially startup companies. What would you say is a good alternative for something like that?
Well, I would say like a brief where you're answering the question, what's the problem? How am I going to solve it? What's my background for solving it? And this is how much it's going to cost, and this is how I plan to pay it back.
Another thing you said pursue talent, trust your talent. Pursue talent. Oh, pursue passion and trust your talent. Right?
Yeah.
I want to ask this because there's might be some people maybe that don't have a business or not starting a business, but maybe they're graduating college and eventually want to start a business, but they're getting their first job. Is your first business or at the beginning of your business or your first job, is it going to automatically be a home run, or is it more of building up to approach? Because I know that there's a lot of people that we deal with that are recent college graduates, and maybe they might assume that it's going to be like right away that fast. Like, what would you say is a good approach or mindset to have with that?
That's a great question. Very intelligent question, actually, because it's something that pretty much we all face. That one of the kind of the misguided concepts is that when you go through high school and you want to pursue college and so forth, you get a lot of pressure as far as what are you majoring in and da 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 da. And yeah, you're 18, 19, 20 years old. You don't really know yet. You haven't had experience because sometimes you think you want to do something. For example, I was in high school and they had a program and they asked me what I go, I like being outside. I like forest. Oh, we have a horticulture program. You can be in forest service or work with plants or whatever. That sounds good. I'm outside. And then after I started looking into it, spend a month out in the forest all by myself? Nah, I don't think so. That is a great question. And I'll tell you, one of the most advantageous ways to address that is from yourself, like, for example, Josh likes certain music. He likes certain people. He likes certain activities. Certain hobbies. So when he's doing these things, time goes by pretty fast. It's kind of a labor of love, right?
Mm-hmm.
But Josh also knows sometimes that, I'm pretty good on a computer and technology and stuff like that. But, I'm not good at writing poems and doing some other things that come real natural to certain people and so forth like that. So this is really where the concept comes back to, right? If you have a passion for something, you're typically going to be pretty good at it because you just like doing it, And then if you're just the opposite, if it's like, you're trying to fit a square peg into a round hole when it comes to your talent. So one of the biggest points of advice I give people is that do kind of treat it like the military. They have all the advantages, okay? And what do I mean by that? Well, when you go into the military, they give you a bunch of aptitude tests, okay? And so what happens is they're quick to assess. Josh's really good at math. He can do things electronically and blah, blah, blah. But he's not the kind of guy that's going to be a good diesel mechanic, So you're going to get options from that. And we can do it ourselves. There's a famous book out there called The Color of My Parachute. It's old, but it still has the right principles. And part of it was like elaborated on for the military. Okay. It comes from kind of a military concept where you can do your own assessment and it'll tell you what your talents are. Okay. So if you can figure out what you're talented at and you can match that up with what your heart has a passion for, you're going to make money. You're going to have a successful business and you're going to have a good life. Okay. And, without getting into a lot of social stuff, you've probably seen it before. Sometimes you see couples that they probably weren't meant to be, and they hung out longer than they were supposed to, and now they're both not very happy. And that happened to a lot of people in labor before. They would get a job and it's something they really don't like doing. They're working at a factory and they didn't like that factory or that kind of business, but they had kids and they had a house to pay for, and they go through life not being real happy. Then you get the other guy who like cuts music and he's able to make money at it. He's really happy, right?
Yeah, exactly. I think that's great.
I hope that answered your question.
No, yeah, that definitely answers my question. I'm sure a lot of people watching as well, there in regards to that. And I know this next question is probably like something that a lot of people that we've gotten a lot of people ask us about, and people in general also asking about. You kind of mentioned this a bit in regards to what's going on with the economy and uncertainty and recession. Recession is a popular term in the news right now. What do you think is maybe one or two steps? I mean, basic steps that someone should take if they're a business owner so that they can remain keeping their business healthy during a possible recession?
Good question again. Well, I think, for example, let me give you some input on the economy. And so I think it might relieve some of the tension that's out there. Mm-hmm. The fundamentals of our economy are very good. What do I mean by that? A lot of consumers are sitting on a lot of cash and they haven't borrowed a lot of money. A lot of them are baby boomers and they've seen, they've lived for a while and they just don't have a lot of credit card balances and things of that nature. A lot of companies, big companies, are sitting on a lot of cash. They have a lot of cash, okay? And they haven't been spending there. They've been hoarding their cash just as a security blanket. So a lot of what we're going through, as you know, is probably kind of maybe some policies about shutting down the pipeline or whatever that maybe hurt, increase the cost of food and gas and all little things like that. That stuff can get changed. But the fundamentals can't. The fundamentals are good. Okay, so I guess what I'm trying to say to you is I don't think we're going to get hurt real bad as long as, we have some common sense, right? And we make some adjustments. So as a business owner, there's not much you can do on the outside. The only thing you can do is on the inside, which means the same thing, right? Don't overborrow, have some reserves, try to be conservative with your business model, because at the end of the day, that's all you can really control.
I think that was a perfect answer. And I do 100% agree. A lot of things, like you said, if there is an issue, like what you said with the gas or food and all that, it could all easily be resolved. But the fundamentals is great. Yeah, definitely. I definitely do see that. And that's going to ease a lot of people that are watching as well. And lastly, last question. So we've talked and we have a lot of business owners that are brand new or someone that's just started. Maybe it's like a side hustle for them. What would you say is the importance behind opening a business bank account, getting eventually your business debit and credit card? What's the value in that for a business owner?
A lot of value, and I'll tell you why. Because a lot of times when you're first starting off in business, you have to figure out how you're going to organize your business, right? And it might be an LLC or it might be a corporation or something like that. But you want to do that, right? You can go ahead and get set up with an LLC, and there's there's some services out there that are relatively inexpensive to do that. But so first determine what structure you want to operate in. Is it LLC? Is it a corporation? Next, open up a bank account under that name, and then you can get a credit card, build credit right there. Even if it's not a big business, you just started it. It's just a concept. But time goes by fast. A year or two later, all of a sudden you've had that credit card and you've had it under that company name for 2 years, and guess what? You got real good credit with it. Okay, so you can borrow with it. That's a fundamental prerequisite to go forward, right? So it's perfect for what you just said. If somebody's doing a little side gig and they think that they might expand it down the road and see how it goes, that's really the perfect way to do it.
I think that's a perfect answer. Yeah. Especially if, because I know there's some people that are probably watching, they're like, oh, but I'm not a big corporation. I'm not a big business yet. I'm just a side hustle. But because there's a lot of people that we know that they have their personal with their business all in one. And we say it time after time, but it's not hard to fix, right? Like as soon as they open that bank account, they just start transferring everything over and it just makes your life easier, right? Less headaches. And
absolutely. Let me add one last thing, just in case I don't want to get going. If you have like an LLC, it's like an $800 a year filing for it. So I know a lot of people, they'll go, it's just a one person, but they'll do a corporation for one person. So you don't have that expense. I mean, I know it doesn't sound like a whole lot of money. But if you're not bringing the money in, $800 is $800. So, you know.
No, yeah, that's great. Everything you shared today was great. Thank you again so much. This presentation has been very great. I don't know if there's anything else that you want to add before we finish this presentation.
Just this, I think we're in a wonderful time in history right now. There's a lot of opportunities, recessions come and go and so forth like that. Don't let that scare you away. If you truly believe in being independent and controlling your own destiny, having your own business is the best way to go. Okay. I've just share one real quick story. I had a guy come in here one day all I was doing is helping another branch sign him up. And he was a guy who came over from Guatemala, and he started off as a janitor, and he was working for a long time at this company. And anyway, he rose in the ranks, blah, blah, blah. Something happened to the owner and got sick and blah, blah, blah. Well, he had relationships with all the key accounts, and they said, look, we like you. We trust you. Can you help us? I don't know. Well, can you do it? Well, yeah. So he got back to with his wife. Guess what? They started a business. And they started doing it. And to make a long story short, here's a guy who came over from Guatemala, didn't have a lot of education, although he did get himself educated because he needed to learn how to talk to the accountants and do exactly what we're all doing here today, right? What you're providing for everybody, he did that. He followed the program. And I tell you, I was so astonished when he put down his financials for me. 3 million plus a year in income and annual sales, and he only has 5 people working for him. Wow. And I said, how do you do that? He goes, well, I get these big events, and so I use third-party services because I don't need a bunch of staff when I do a big event, so I can hire them temporarily, and when we're done, and I don't have that overhead, but these 5 people, they're my core group. They help me organize stuff. And, he's a quiet man. You never would have thought of anything like that, and just goes to show, you don't have to have anything special to make it business other than like you and I just talked about. You want to have a passion for your business. If you really love your business and you can do something that you love and make money at it, boy, God bless you. It's the way to go.
I think that was a perfect way to end this workshop with that last, phrase that you said. And it's funny you say, he's from Guatemala, because a lot of the people we serve are actually from Central America, and a majority are from Guatemala. So a lot of the people that we serve are from Guatemala. So that might be a great inspiration for someone that's watching, coming from a different country, not knowing the language and being able to build a successful business. It's like the American dream right there. Thank you again so much. This workshop has been wonderful. Thank you so much.
Josh, can I just say one last thing? So
go ahead.
just so nobody gets confused, I was born in Puerto Rico. My great-grandfather had come over from France, so my name's French. But sometimes people they don't understand that I'm Latino también. So I just wanted to
awesome.
Make sure that you know that Spanish was my first language. I always tell people that. How'd you learn English? I said I learned English watching cartoons as a kid.
That's awesome. So you're a living example of someone that came from another country, which we serve a lot of first generation immigrant families. So that's really awesome to hear. And I'm Latino too as well. My parents came from as immigrants, but I was born here, but I'm still share the same culture. It's in my blood, so I love it. Thank you. Thank you so much, Gene, and thank you to the audience for watching. We'll connect with you guys soon with more workshops that we're going to be doing. We've been doing a great series with Pacific Premier Bank so far. We've been covering a lot of topics, and we're going to continue the series for all of you guys. Wow, that was a really great workshop. I think Gene really answered all of my questions that I asked him. He gave a really good insight and vast experience, and pretty crazy that he said that he started a bank, back in the days, and he had that vast experience of working with many, many business owners. He gave a lot of good advice. If you're a business owner, even if someone that's just watching and want to learn about business, this is a great workshop for you. Share it with your friends, share it with your family, people that that have businesses. This would be a really great resource for them. This is what we're doing for all of you guys, bringing resources, whether you're a small business owner, entrepreneur, a college student, a family that's just looking to maybe buy their first house, or how to budget. This is what we do. Avance Latino. We help you. We bring the resources, whether it's in English or Spanish. We try our very best. Again, thank you to our friends over at Pacific Premier Bank for helping us with this workshop and the whole series that we've been doing with them, covering various topics. Thank you everyone for watching. Take care and have a great day.